Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 12 of Point of Purchase. My name is Isaac Wanzama. I'm the founder and chief strategist at eCommerce. We are an e-commerce agency here in Whitby, and we help our companies, both retailers and brands, grow their online sales. If you're watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, or possibly on LinkedIn for the first time, please feel free to be part of the conversation. Share your comments, questions you may have, and we'll try to take them up during the course of the show. If you're watching Point of Purchase for the first time, a little bit about the show. It's a new streaming new streaming series about a year in now, where we dig into all things retail and e-commerce. We discuss industry news, technology, best practices, and more importantly, we examine all things that are happening in a way that hopefully gives you a little bit more information than what you came with. We share our own expertise as players as in the industry, but more importantly, we like to bring in experts in that domain and various domains to help us uncover some of these trends. And today's episode is certainly no different from that. Today's show is Show Me the Money, how brands and retailers are driving e-commerce using BNPL, or Buy Now, Pay Later. For those who may or may not know, Buy Now, Pay Later is a type of short-term financing that allows consumers to make purchases online or in stores and pay later, often interest-free. Payments are made within specified term or in a predetermined number of payments. This type of payment option, BNPL, has really its roots in Australia. It has grown quite significantly there, but increasingly we're seeing traction here in North America as well. Specifically in Canada, here we expect to see $3.6 billion in BNPL-driven sales over the next 12 months. And stats also show that 65% of Canadians 35 to 44 plus are interested in BNPL as a payment option over their traditional payment options. In the US, by contrast, in 2020, BNPL e-commerce sales were $19 billion. That's in 2020, compared to only 9.5 billion in 2019. So considerable growth in there. But as always, we like to dig in behind the stats. What is BNPL? How does it work? How do retailers benefit from it? How do you get started? What are the costs associated? So that is the point of this show today, and we're going to dig into all aspects of that. Fortunately, we're joined today by an expert and a leader in the space, Stephen Croth. Hey, Stephen, how are you?
Hey, I'm great, Isaac. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, always happy to have you. Steve is the managing director of Zip Canada, one of the larger players in the space. Further to that, a little bit about Steve. He's an entrepreneur with 20 plus years of experience leading technology-based businesses. Steve is also founder of a startup, most recently FlipGift, and now he is leading Zip Canada. So quite a resume there, Steve.
Yes, it's been a fun ride, and I'm pretty excited to be in this space right now, as you've kind of provided some statistics to the growth and excitement in it. So it's a great place to be.
Absolutely. Well, before we get started, we're going to dig into all things BNPL, answer a lot of questions that folks may have, both on the consumer side, on the retailer side, on the brand side. I just want to remind you, if you are watching the show and you have questions for myself, more importantly for Steve, please leave them in the comments. We'll take them up through the course of the show. So with that, Steve, let's get into discussion around BNPL, perhaps starting with Zip. Tell us about where Zip Canada is, how it came about. Obviously, I know there's a relationship there a little bit with QuadPay. Kind of set the stage for us a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, so I got involved with Zip. I think I started talking to them back in January of this year. I was referred to them through a friend who knew some of the people in Australia. I really, I have a passion for e-commerce, and I've been working in fintech, so it was a pretty good fit for me. And joining as managing director of Canada, I now am responsible for the business in Canada and getting it off the ground. And we started in April. I joined basically the company because of its mission, its purpose, the strength of the firm, what they want to do globally, and the opportunity that I see in this space, and mainly to disrupt fintech, which is, I think, something that's desperately needed in Canada. So globally, we're a fairly large company. We're 900 employees. We're in 12 countries. We've got about 7 million users and over 50,000 merchants. And we're processing more than 6 billion in transactions. And we've provided about 6 million leads to our merchants on a monthly basis. So it's a rocket ship that I'm really happy to be a part of. But it is early days for Canada. You know, we've just started, and we're working on two things really. The first is bringing the QuadPay product into Canada, and the second is developing our merchant portfolio along with that.
Absolutely. And I think we're going to get into a lot of that because, I mean, I think you touched on it, disrupting the fintech or the financial credit product space is really what BNPL has been able to do. So let's step back a little bit for folks who may not know or haven't used it yet. Explain to us what BNPL is, how it's different from other products out there.
Sure. You said it best. It's really just a seamless, easy way to use short-term financing. It's a service that allows people to make purchases, and instead of paying up front for them, they pay for them over time. So with us, it's you pay in 4 installments over 6 weeks. So you take an example would be like $100 purchase. Instead of making that all, paying for that all at once, it's $25 over 6 weeks, and it's zero interest. So that's why people love it.
Yeah, and that seems to be one of the compelling reason that we've seen some of this uptake, and we're going to get into that. Now, Zip exists in a space where we're seeing PayPal, we're seeing Afterpay, we're seeing Affirm, and it seems that each one of these players has a little bit of a different business model and different use case. How does Zip differ from some of your competitors?
I think it's a few things. One is our purpose and vision. So we're here to create what I would call a fearless financial future for our customers. And that means a future that's, free from financial stress and the burdensome, effects of debt. If you look at credit card debt, it's over $1 trillion in the US, and that's something that we just don't put our users in a position to be in that. Secondly, I think it's our offering, the breadth and depth of our offering, and that covers product. We have really unique product in Canada with both online and an in-store component. We have an app that helps drive leads to our retailers, and we have, I would call a model a different commercial model that allows us to deliver and charge for value both on the merchant side and the consumer side.
Right.
And then lastly, I think it's just our experience. We're really obsessed with providing a superior experience to both our merchants and our end users, and that's reflected in the way people talk about us, the rating of our brand, and the extremely high ratings. I think we're 4.9 stars in the App Store for our product.
Right. And I think you touched on it. You often hear the conversation around, this debt trap that some of the traditional lending products kind of get consumers in. That seems to be one of the causes as far as the surge behind here. But we've seen doubling. I mentioned the stat off the top in the US. What other factors do you think are really driving this uptake in terms of BNPL for consumers?
Well, I think in Canada, it's a few different things. One is the explosive growth in e-commerce brought on by all the lockdowns from the pandemic. If you look back on the last 18 months, I think e-commerce has grown something like 75%. We're the second fastest growing market in the world.
Right.
And it's across all ages. You see more people that would typically be laggards in adopting e-commerce and shopping online. They're now starting to, people like 60 plus years old.
Right.
The second, I think, is the growth in fintech just in general, and the adoption of new products and the willingness for people to do that. And that's especially true here. So people are looking for new, better, low-cost ways to bank, to pay, to move money. And I think that's great, because with this recent announcement of moving to a more open banking system by 2023, that gives a lot of opportunity, and it's only going to accelerate the adoption of these new technologies. And then I think the third is the rejection of just traditional products and the fees associated with them, and that includes banking and credit, by younger, savvy digital natives. They just don't want to pay the 20 to 30% fees that credit cards charge them. So they're looking for alternatives to traditional financing. And then lastly, I think it's the death of cash. pandemic has really, it's killed money.
Right.
What was interesting for me was I was out at a restaurant last week and went into the restroom, and there was someone like the concierge that was there
Right.
for you the towel and the gum, and I said to him, "Sorry, I don't have any cash," and he's like, "Oh, no problem. You can just tap. I have Square." So I gave him $10 just for the fact that he was so innovative to have Square in the restroom, and that's how the world is going, right?
Right. No, and I think that's some of the disruption you talked right off the top there. So let's get into some of the mechanics here. Obviously, you're leading Zip in Canada, and your job, I imagine, is growing this this retailer or this brand base. Let's get into that. How does it work specifically for a brand that wants to begin to work with Zip, as an example? What are the mechanics? Maybe walk us through some of that.
Sure. Online and in-store are a little different, and it really depends on the technology that the retailer has and what they're using. But there can be a really light, fast integration, or through a plugin, or there could be some coding involved. But we have really seamless integrations with all major platforms, Shopify, BigCommerce, Magento, and others. So basically, once you sign a contract with us, you go through an integration process. So we lead the retailer through that process. We help inform them of the steps they need to make to get us integrated into their checkout, and educate them not only what needs to be done technically, but what needs to be done from what we call an activation perspective to get us on their product pages and in front of their customers as well.
Right.
But quite simply, like they do some technical work. We become a payment option in checkout, just like PayPal or Visa, and people choose us at checkout, or at the cash in store. They choose to pay with us. If you're in store, then what you would do is you would tap with your phone and using like Google or Apple Wallet,
right.
Just like you would like a debit or credit card, and that just breaks the payment into four. And the same thing happens online with our product. So we make it really simple. Our retailers can get up and running in anywhere from a day to a few days. And obviously there's some testing involved.
Right.
The most important part is just making sure that it's properly integrated, both, online and offline in their stores, and that people know that it's there and it's an option, not only in checkout, but on the product pages. So we have processes for that. We work with our retail partners to make sure that they're following best practices to make the product as successful as possible. So that means just having presence, on the website, in their newsletters, on emails and social,
right,
different things. And that's kind of, we take them kind of end to end through that, and help them with that. And then, once we're up and running, it's working with them on co-marketing initiatives to make sure that we're getting people to use our product and through them, and so that we both have success.
Could you touch on the settlement a little bit? So I'm a brand. I've taken Zip and made it an option on my site. How do the fees work? When do I get paid? That'll be useful as well.
Yeah, that's great. We pay the retailer basically the next day on a transaction. We settle almost like instantly with them. So the fees range depending on the model. Like we typically, there is what we call a merchant service fee that ranges from 4.5% plus 30 cents to 6% plus 30 cents, depending on volumes. That's inclusive of the payment processing fees.
Right.
But that can be offset with our unique customer payment model, which is called merchant fee for payment plan, where the merchant can say, hey, like the customer should contribute to this, and they can charge the customer $4, so $1 per installment.
Right.
That payment plan, which can, with low cost retailers, that can offset some of the merchant fee. What's interesting about that, the MFPP, is I think a lot of retailers are hesitant, to charge consumers a fee. Because they think, they'll just abandon cart. They won't do it. And it's actually not true. What we've seen that's been very interesting for us is that in many cases, people end up spending more money when they're charged a fee. And the analogy we kind of like to use with that is like, imagine you're taking you're taking money out of an ATM. You're only going to take $100 out if the fee is like $1.50. But if someone's going to charge you $3.50 to take out your money, you're probably going to take out $300. So there's this, perceived value in the service that helps drive, higher order values, which is great.
Which kind of leads me to my next conversation here. I mean, I go through this process and of setting up and everything involved in there, but ultimately, what are you communicating as a value benefit? I mean, why would a brand or a retailer go through this process, both from a conversion standpoint or whatever? Maybe talk to what's there to gain.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm an e-com guy, so for me, it's all about the funnel. And I think if you talk to most retailers, we're all spending tons of money on this black box that's Google search engine marketing, Facebook advertising, you name it. We're doing everything we can to get people in top of funnel, but where you can really get some benefit is by looking at bottom of funnel and conversions in funnel, fixing that leaky bucket. So that's where we work. We work at bottom of the funnel. We help convert customers that maybe can't afford a purchase. So it doesn't fit within their budget. We help convert those casual shoppers, and our promise is to drive upwards of 20% increase in conversions.
Wow.
Drive anywhere from 60 to 80% increase in order values. And then we have about 80% of our customers coming back and shopping more than once using our service with our retail partners. So quite simply, this is about like getting people to, buy more stuff and spend more, when they do it.
Right, absolutely. I think it's quite amazing that you could talk about an increased conversion of 20+% just by introducing this product. Certainly from a brand perspective, I could see why you consider that, let alone the return customers. So let's get into the face of the customer a little bit. Who's using this? Obviously, we got stats. I'm looking at one here that says 56% of U.S. customers by March 2021 had used BNPL, which to me is quite astounding considering the size of the U.S. market. From your perspective, and you could talk about Canada, the U.S., and globally here, what kind of customer gravitates to BNPL and why? And is that changing?
Mm-hmm. I like to say it's a smart one.
Right.
Someone who refuses to pay the 20 to 30% interest charge in a world where it's like a 2.4, 5% prime rate.
Right.
So our data actually shows 1 in 2 people have stopped using credit card and have substituted with buy now, pay later.
Right.
And 77% of those people would also use it in store. So it tends to be a mix, actually, like of male, female. It's pretty evenly split, and it really skews towards millennials, which I think are people that have grown up digital. So anywhere from 25 to 40 years old.
Right.
They have really healthy household incomes. They're great customers, 80,000 plus a year, and they shop online frequently.
Right.
But we're also seeing like incredible growth in people that skew a bit younger and people that skew a bit older. Like you can think about how this could be applicable for occasions that are things like emergencies or unforeseen expenses. If you're a pensioner on a fixed income, this allows you to break your payments into 6 weeks, which is over 2 months, which is what attracts a lot of people and helps them afford those things.
Right.
So we're seeing growth kind of in all segments of ages, but I would say like the early adopters are definitely the millennials.
They're fantastic. And we're going to dig a little bit deeper into the segments a little bit, but just a quick opportunity to reset. If you are watching us and have questions for Steve or myself around BNPL, please feel free to leave them in the comments. We'll take them on as we near the end of the show. With that, Steve, you mentioned this yourself. We saw a growing population here in terms of who are shopping online. And I'm talking specifically around the demo of 60 plus when it came to online shopping, whether it was groceries or otherwise. Have you seen experimentation with this product in that demographic? And do you expect to see some of that happening?
We've seen it, but not as much as we would like. Knowing many of these people, I'm patient. My instinct is let's give them some time. they're just starting to get used to buying online. Many of them have just started shopping online in the last year and a half. So I think it's really too early to say whether or not they're going to be the new exploding segment in this, but I expect more growth from them, especially if they're on like that fixed income or they're on, a pension, because it's just a great way to spread out the cost of stuff. But I would put that age group typically in the laggard kind of category of adopters. So, once we create more awareness, in market and people start to get more familiar with the offering, I see them kind of coming in line then.
On there, and the conversation seems to be that credit cards kind of took out checks, and now it seems like BNPL is going to have the same impact on credit cards. Would you agree with that sort of assessment from a landscape standpoint?
Well, I think if you look at the behavior of most of the credit card companies and specifically, banks, I think a lot of them are asking right now, what's our buy now, pay later strategy? And they're either building it in-house or they're looking to partner with organizations to offer something like this.
Right.
And those that don't have an offering, they know they're kind of late to the game. So some have tried to launch similar programs to this, but they just don't have the product, the technology, or the capabilities in-house to service both sides of the market successfully. And it's not their core business. So, I kind of see it like, is it going to replace credit cards? It's doing a very good job right now. If you think about the stat that I referenced earlier, which is, one in two people are kind of turning away from their credit cards and coming to BNPL.
Right.
I would expect, most of those providers are going to respond to this. The question is really whether or not they have the capability to execute as well as the native players in the space have.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems to be a trend in a range of different segments. You have sort of native startups that kind of make some traction, then you have big players that kind of move in there. Do you see an opportunity here for Made in Canada BNPL solution? I mean, how far are we from kind of launching our own here?
I think, from my perspective, our opportunity in the way we're thinking about BNPL is more from a global perspective. I think what eCommerce has done, and it's really created a tremendous amount of market opportunities outside of, native regions for organizations. So people that are looking to build brands online or brands that are turning to online, like those, manufacturers that have traditionally relied on brick and mortar retail, they're thinking a lot more globally. And we see that with some of our partners in market, like Shein and Boohoo and Fashion Nova, great brands that are kind of global to begin with. So that's where we're placing our bet. And when you look at Zip as a whole being in 12 countries and our product offering, we've got something called SMI, which is basically a single merchant interface, an API that allows a retailer to open up into all of our global markets simultaneously with one integration, which is quite amazing. And in discussions with retailers that have are searching for that international presence or have their own brands, they're really looking at, okay, what other markets can we move into? And as a shopper, quite frankly, I think Canadians, more than any other country in the world, we're used to buying and shopping in other countries. I've read as much as 45% of online e-commerce out of Canada is done in China and the US.
Absolutely.
And if I look at what my kids, what they buy and where they buy, they're buying cross-border, especially in the US, all the time. In fact, I've even myself, I went to look for some swim trunks and I ended up buying some from a great brand out of the US called Fair Harbor. The duties and shipping charges were not that crazy. They didn't deter me because the pricing was so great in the US. So I just see global as being like such a big part of everyone's story, and it's just going to propel more growth for Canadian companies. So that's what I get excited about.
No, absolutely. And I think it's amazing to kind of see that opportunity and innovation happen. And I'm going to pick up on something you mentioned there as far as, brands taking this on and making it work for them. Can you walk us through an example of a retailer brand that has taken this, how they've, kind of introduced it to their customers and really seen success with it?
Yeah, the critical part is, there is some awareness and some education that has to be done to, the end user. So what we like to do online is we sit on the, product description pages, where, you could see the price of an item, and then below that it says basically, or pay in 4 with quad pay at this price. So the example be, it's $100 shirt or pay $25 in 4 installments with Zip quad pay.
Right.
So that's kind of how we get to that online. Also, we ensure, like, whenever we're launching with a retailer, that we have education and awareness into all of their channels. So we sit on their website, we're in their emails, we're in their newsletters, we get promoted in social. We usually have landing pages on their sites where people can learn about us. Those are the things that are pretty critical,
right,
for people. And then remember, like, once you're a Zip user, you have an account. There's lots of education opportunities on our own properties as well. In store is a little bit different, just because you've got the physical component. So when you're in store, you're going to see signage. There's some education that has to be done to the in-store staff. We're at the point of sale as well, where we've got signage that allows someone to download the app and transact with us. So those are kind of the critical touch points for us.
right.
But I would say in general, more than half the market is aware of BNPL. I'd say in Canada, we're fairly nascent from a use and adoption perspective. So that's the opportunity really here, is getting more people actually using a product like this more often.
No, absolutely. And I think this is what this conversation begins to bring, both to brands and retailers, and hopefully customers as well. Let's get into categories a little bit. I mean, I think this is also what kind of differentiates the different BN players here. From your perspective, what kind of categories work best for BNPL? What kind of price category or sort of product category works for Zip versus maybe some of the other players?
Mm-hmm. So today, I think BNPL works best for purchases probably under $1,500, just because of the way that our advanced risk engines and decisioning models work.
Right.
The tech is really built to assess risk on that ceiling. So when you get into bigger ticket items, you need to do a deeper assessment on a person's capacity to fund a larger purchase over time.
Right.
So I would say, like, right now, thinking about that, we cross multiple categories. The most popular really being in fashion, beauty, homewares, electronics, sporting goods. But as our offering matures and we all start to move into more long duration lending types of programs, paying 3, paying 6, paying 12, paying 24.
Right.
I see us having a more holistic product that can service both, like, below that price point and above it.
Right. Fantastic. Well, I mean, it wouldn't be an e-commerce interview without talking about omnichannel. And I think you raised the fact that I could shop in store and buy online as well with the same product. Do you think BNPL kind of plays a role here in driving an omnichannel experience from that perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's important that the retailers offer, the same products and experiences online and in store. They fall short with consumers, and
right.
The consumers get confused or frustrated. So at the point of purchase, wherever it is, online or in store, you should be enabling people to pay the way they want. And if it's, they want to pay for it in using a service like this so that it fits into their budget, you need to facilitate that. So especially when you're talking about, in store, one of the biggest challenges with in store is what they call, the browser or the showroomer.
Right.
And if you think about what we're doing online and who we're targeting, like, this is another way to convert that casual customer in store to making a purchase, at that time.
No, absolutely. And I think has always been the challenge when it comes to omni-channels. How do you all make it all work together? Now, I'm going to stop here and take a viewer question that has come in here. The viewer asks, what about B2B? Are you seeing growth in the space using BNPL? Is there opportunities for business to do business together using this platform?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the heritage of Zip actually in Australia. It's a bit of a different business. It grew up more in consumer and business financing.
Right.
So I see the wheel being really interesting when you start to get into B2B, and the value proposition actually getting more interesting, just because if you think about the flywheel for the merchant, if you can provide financing services that helps them with their working capital on the one side to continue, buy inventory or, support their operations, and you're also providing a service that helps their customers buy from them.
Right.
That to me is just an absolute, that's the perfect type of offering for these firms. So in Australia, we make it really, we bring that same simple experience to businesses. We can lend up to $500,000 to businesses in Australia. We're looking at importing some of those practices into other countries where it makes sense. And I think when you look at commercial banking and the pains that people have to go through to get loans, if you can use technology and decision and really advanced decision technology to facilitate simpler ways for people to get access to capital more often and more inexpensively, you're going to be a winner. So yeah, I see big opportunity in the future with B2B. I think it's going to be part of the whole story.
Yeah, and I could attest that, obviously, as somebody who runs a business and agency, the fact that you're buying products at rate X because you're using some of the traditional lending products, but you can get it this way. I think that'll be very, very compelling. So, again, just to go back to the disruptive nature of this product, there was a time where consumers didn't trust to put their credit card or pay for things online, but that changed. Now we're seeing not only we're using e-wallets, we're using apps, and now we're using other products like Zip. How has this evolution helped retailers in general, from your perspective?
I think it's about reducing friction. I think a lot of checkout experiences have traditionally been riddled with friction. I think I referenced it before. It was something like 85% of people come into sites and don't check out. And I think in pandemic, there's been this weird thing where people are loading carts just for the joy of shopping and then abandoning them. But I think, enabling a faster, more valuable, payment option that reduces that friction or makes someone not question whether they should buy something or not, that just will help with conversions. And I think that anyone in e-commerce should be obsessed with, conversion. What I talked about earlier, just figuring out, what's my leaky bucket look like? Where are those opportunities for incremental improvements to getting people to buy once I've got them in my funnel? And that's really what we do. We sit at the bottom. So it's the people that you already have, it's making sure that we get them through. And if we can improve conversions by, up to 20%, that could be millions of incremental found revenue to our merchant partners.
No, absolutely. And I think that's fantastic. So Zip exists in a quickly growing market, as we've established. A lot of dynamic events and activities are happening. I'm going to call one here Square the other day, which is a huge platform that's made inroads from an e-com standpoint. Went and bought Afterpay. PayPal introduced their Pay in 4. There's rumors here that RBC was kind of launching their own product. So there's birth of new companies, consolidation. Is all this activity good or bad for the space?
We think it's a great thing.
Right.
It's that rising tide lifts all boats, right? I think a few points just on the recent activity and what everyone is talking about is the first thing is it really validates all of our collective offerings. So if you look at the enterprise value of that deal, it's pretty astronomical. So obviously these companies are generating a lot of value in market. It speaks to the longevity of the space. This is an offering that's going to be around for a long time, and it's going to continue to evolve. And I think it will be core to payments moving forward. And so much of this opportunity right now, especially in Canada, is just about driving more awareness and really galvanizing the sector in general. So I think there's tons of room for multiple players, and there is an argument for choice that there should be more than one player, just like there's more than one credit card company and more than one bank. So I kind of believe like ultimately more choice is better for the consumer. And they're going to be the ones that choose, who they want to work with.
Right.
So to me, it's not a zero-sum game, like, oh, because, at Square bought Afterpay, now everyone else is done. No, I think it's people are probably going to use multiple products and maybe even multiple products simultaneously. And that will continue, both now and into the future.
No, absolutely. I mean, that particular deal was the largest that ever happened in Australian trading history. And of course, I could see why Square would want to go after that integration for their e-com merchants. So it made a lot of sense. Another question here, we may have touched on this already, Steve, but when is the Zip app going to be available? I know you spoke about the app. Is that available in Canada and for Canadians?
Yeah, we're hoping to have the app available within the next 6 months.
Right.
It's going to be a core part of our offering, and we're pretty excited to bring that model to our integrated merchant partners and non-integrated merchants in the Canadian market,
right,
and show them what we're made of. I kind of referenced it just in the opening, but it's pretty amazing. Globally, we're pushing about 6 million leads to our merchants monthly.
Right.
And, we're running these special events, Zip Days, and we had one called Quad Pay Fest, where they're 4-day special shopping events that we do on behalf of all our partners that are in our app, where we bring special offers and promotions to our app users, and they seem to love to want to shop with us. So it's kind of a win-win, and I'm most excited for the app because that's when I think it gets really fun, where you can start curating and bringing great products and offerings to your end users.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly leading into the last, 2 or 3 quarters of the year, I think there's a lot of compelling conversation there. You touched on this, Steve, also in terms of all the things that are happening. What changes or trends do you see that are exciting in the fintech space at all, in general, both in Canada and globally? What are you watching? What are you very excited about?
Well, I think there's definitely a move here to more open banking. So new, more innovative services in areas like, app first banks, or what a lot of people call neobanks. I'm really excited about real-time payroll because I think the way that people get paid is so antiquated, which is why we're here. You get paid either monthly or bi-weekly. So real-time payroll is really interesting to me. And then I think, fast and simple, low-cost ways of moving money. That's really, interesting to me. New ways of online trading. And of course, you can't talk about, fintech without mentioning blockchain and crypto, and what's happening, there. And I have friends that are in the NFT space and doing lots of really interesting things. And you kind of layer on top of that everything that's going on with digital wallets and new payment methods. And I just think, the future is going to be just incredible if I look out a couple of years for Canadians just to have everything that they need and be able to do things much more simply than when we're doing them today.
No, absolutely. And I think a lot of what's going to happen is going to be driven by what consumers are looking for. You touched on NFT. I was following a Canadian artist just this week that sold 1 million copies of their album on NFT for $1 each and sold in under 2 minutes.
It's so incredible.
It's really interesting what's happening there. So Steve, we really appreciate what you have done here today. I think there's a lot of uncovering here, and I think there's going to be quite a dialogue to continue. So we want to thank you for shedding light on all things BNPL, and we'll follow that. As always, before we let you go and ask and wrap up here, we ask our guests, what was the last thing you bought online from an e-commerce site?
I bought a few pair of jeans from Doer. It's a great brand with great products. They're comfy, stretchy, premium jeans that are affordable. I would say I'm buying way too much stuff on top of that from Amazon. It seems like they're coming to my house every day. But Doer is the big one that I shopped with most recently.
Absolutely. So you truly are an e-com guy, which I love. Again, of course, for our viewers, Steve, where can we find out more about Zip Canada, the product, how to get started, and maybe about you?
Yeah, right now, I would say everyone just go to our website. It's quadpay.ca. We're rebranding to Zip globally on the 16th of August.
Awesome.
So the domain will be changing there, but if you go to quadpay.ca, you can find all the information, whether you're a merchant or an end user. There's contact links there if you want to reach out to us. And we'd be more than willing to share more information and answer any questions that anyone has. So yeah, find us there.
Absolutely, thank you so much, and it's definitely an exciting space. We do want to watch how Zip grows, and certainly how the NPL is going to grow in Canada. It seems like a really wide opportunity here, and of course, we want to thank you for joining us on this episode today. If you want to find out more about GeekSpeak and how perhaps we could support your online journey, check us out at geekspeakcommerce.com. And from there, you also find out what our next episode is. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a great rest of the afternoon. Thanks, Steve, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thanks, Isaac.
Bye, everybody. Okay.